Hello everyone, and welcome to another Thursday. That means it's another time for a Gear Talk. It's Gear Talk time, ladies and gentlemen. We do this every other Thursday at 5 p.m., and we are still continuing today the GABE'S CONVOY discussion series. Who is it about today? Well, the polls don't lie, and we're getting down to the very last few people. Today we will be talking about Sid Redburn for everything, ladies and gents. Now, for Sid, I like to do like little mini skits or like something, or like I've been doing lately, just holding up the Lancer and just like, oh yeah, because I said I would, and I guess I did in this one too. But I couldn't think of anything for Sid's. Like, I thought to myself, like, maybe I'll go buy an eye patch, but I just never... Did I ever have a chance to go buy an eye patch? No. Do I, like, dye my beard gray? No, I've already got some grays, like, coming in down here as it is, so, I mean, that kind of works. And then I thought... Well, I just got off of Memorial Day weekend, and I was out and about a lot, and I ended up getting a sunburn a bit on my arm. So I got a bit of a sunburn, and I figured, well, red burn, you know, my skin's red from the sun, red burn. I guess, you know, that's what we're getting. You know, it can't be perfect every time, so that's what we're getting this time. Talking about Sid, we got to talk about the very beginning of his character. Now, it's important to note to start all this off, because it's going to come up constantly throughout this, but Sid, at the time of, like, Gears tactics and everything that's happening, Sid is a bit of an older gent. He's not that spry, he's not young, he's not even, like, middle-aged. He is past, he's elderly. Sid is, like, I would roughly say, you could honestly say he's probably mid to late 60s. At worst, he's mid 70s. Like, Sid has some age on him. Sid is an older gent, and he's one of the only characters we know of that is still fighting at, like, an older age. Like, we had Hoffman, but he was, like, towards getting to his older years. Like, he was still, like, he was older, but I'd say, like, early 60s to mid 60s, where it's very clear that Sid is older than that. You know, like, right now we have, like, Paddock. Paddock is very much old. I think if we did the numbers we did a while ago, I think he's in his, like, 80s around that right now. So, Paddock still holds the gold medal, but Sid definitely comes in second place. So, Sid is, at the time that he is at New Hope. Remember, this is when New Hope was first going on. It was still active and everything. Sid was here, like, as a new spry recruit that just came into the COG. Now, he is friends with the family of the Tolman. So he was friends with Colonel Tolman. His family was. He grew up in a very, like, we all have, kind of like the Santiagos. We all grow up, we're all going to be Gears, we all fight the patriotic duty that we have. So kind of like the Santiagos and like the Carmines put together is the Redburn family. So he was very much at a young age raised to be like, I'm going to join the COG and I'm going to fight for my countrymen and fight for my country. So that's how he was. So since he was friends with Tolman at the time, and Tolman was the colonel, so like what Hoffman was, that's what Tolman was. He ended up like talking to the Redburns and like, hey, I can put Sid in a very nice position, a nice, very good start-off position for his career in the COG. Like, he's going to have a very, very good start. He's not just going to start off as just, like, a grunt in the military. This is a pretty nice gig. So, it turns out that what he was given was, you are going to be a guard at a very prestigious research facility, the New Hope Research Facility. And, oh, my goodness. Imagine not knowing what you're going to get into when you hear you're going to be a guardsman at New Hope. Like, no one did. Like, it's not like, oh no, like, you know, it's such a great thing, and then when you get to New Hope, everyone's like, no, this is the worst place in the world. It wasn't like that. When Sid first joined up, it really was just researchers, and Niles wasn't completely nuts yet. He was getting there, but not fully. But then they stationed him there, and he's like, you know, not too bad, it's a good start position. And then Fit hits the shan pretty hard when you have it where Niles is now trying to create monsters, the Locust, pretty much. He's starting off with the Sires, but he's aiming for Locust in the end. And these Sires are being created, like, all these test subjects are being, like, just slowly transformed. And basically what Sid ends up becoming, he is still a guard, but his unofficial position is, as Ukkon so eloquently puts it, pretty much a torturer is what he is. So, like, what he would do is, like, he would, to restrain them, he would tie them and chain them to their beds. He would lock them in their rooms. When the doctors needed blood, it was his job to go in, pin them to the floor, and he was the one that had to hold them down against their will while they were being experimented on and getting their blood drawn. Like, all of that was going on, and it comes down to the point where the Sires are being created, and again, these are just ravenous beasts that I have no doubt I fully believe there was a point where, like, worst case scenario called for it. And this is just a guess. This was never confirmed, but Sid probably had to put a few of these people down. And remember, these were children. Sid probably had to kill some mutated children. And during all of this, Sid is not okay with any of it. Sid has grievances about his position and what he's doing. He hates it. He is not a fan. No one on the outside world, remember, knows what is going on except for those at New Hope. So, this is all happening. No one is a fan, well, except for Niles and the scientists that are actually on board for it. But all of this is going on. And then one day, we have a sire that has come out, still kept their mental sanity, and this is where Ukkon is introduced. Now, as far as we are aware by the interaction these two have and how things are mentioned, these two, Sid and Ukkon, they have a pretty heavy history. These two definitely came across one another and definitely came head-to-head many times at New Hope. It's stated that Sid at times had to be the one to watch over Ukkon, and Ukkon was constantly just causing problems around Sid. Probably just for amusement at that point, just to mess with Sid, I'm guessing. And Sid obviously hated it. Sid hated everything there to the point where one day he tries to get word out to Monroe, to Monroe, everyone was trying to do that. That wasn't on board for this, but he tries Tolman first. And he tries to get a hold of Tolman and say, like, hey, I know this is breaking protocol. I know this isn't, like, the correct method of doing this, but because of the fact that you're a family friend, that we know each other well enough, this is an extreme circumstance where I need to write to you and I need to get information out about what's going on here. And he writes down everything that's going on, about how Niles is making monsters and all of this stuff, and he sends it out. Since this is New Hope and they're trying to keep everything on the up and up and quiet, they ended up intercepting his letter. Niles sees it and they are trying to get rid of Sid now. They end up booting him out, getting rid of him. And at this point, too, like, it's not like Sid was the only person to do this. There were many scientists, many employees that were also whistleblowing on New Hope. Like, Sid was not the first, he was not the last one to do it. So when all of this goes down and Sid's about to leave, I'm assuming they were going to do worse than boot him out, but he was making a run for it. He did take the time to go into Niles' office and grab some of his paperwork so that he would have that as an insurance policy in the future of, like, I have proof of what's going on here. So he takes all of that and he leaves it. He books it. Now, when he leaves, he comes to Tolman, Monroe, all of that. At this point, Monroe has heard about things and has shut New Hope down. That is when the scientists have made their run for it. They're trying to get out of there and make it to Mount Kadar because of the like back alley deal they made with like a fraction member of like the COG that wanted them to continue their research. Now, once all that happens and they learn about the crimes and everything that Sid did, but they learn like it was against its orders. He was trying to contact and get out of there in the first place. Like he was openly trying to whistleblow and, like, get out of these heinous acts that were happening. They do decide to pardon him for the things that happened. He was not held accountable. Well, he was held accountable, but he wasn't, like, punished for what was going on. I feel like they thought, like, you going through this, that's kind of punishment enough, Sid. Like, you're okay. Like, you know, it's messed up what happened, but we understand the situation now. We know what was going on. You should be okay. So after all of that happens, and Sid has been released from New Hope, he is now put into the rest of the war going on during the Pendulum Wars. We don't get a lot of what goes on with Sid from this point on. We know that during everything, at one point he does make it to the rank of Major, so he's like gone up the ranks quite a bit. This is the same rank we've had other characters we've met. We actually mentioned him earlier, but Paddock also had the rank of Major at one point. So, funny, like these two characters share a lot of similarities in that respect. Both of them have like the same kind of personality too. Just one was UIR and one was COG. But anyway, he holds the rank of Major. He made it that high up there. At one point, we know during the Pendulum Wars, he did lose his eye. I believe it is his left eye he lost, so let me see here, yeah. So I believe it's his left eye. If I'm wrong, it's his right. But he loses his eye. And once he loses it, he has like I don't know if people have this in real life or not. Like, I'd have to look it up. Like, you see it in a lot of like fantasy games or fictional games, but he has an eye patch that's pretty much like bolted into his face. Like, it looks like it's kind of bolted to hold in. So he doesn't have his eye anymore. He's down to one. And you also learn during his time in the Pendulum Wars, he was stationed over in Vasgar during this. Now, what he did or why he was there, we don't really know. We just know that at the time he was there, and that is when he left everything in. I have it written down. Over in Winlock. That is where he took his documents that he got from New Hope, his insurance policy, and he placed it there. He tucked it away and hid it in case the day ever came he had to expose, like, here's what happened, here's what the COG was doing. Like, this was a COG-sanctioned thing that happened. Now, obviously, Monroe and them weren't aware we were making monsters until, like, later on when the monsters were made. But still, the cog, gave them the go-ahead to make things. And this is what came out of it all. Now, after all of this is done, the Pendulum Wars comes to an end, and this is when Sid has finally finished. He made it through alive, he's fine, and the 6 weeks of peace begin, and pretty much we just have it where, Sid is well, war's over. Okay. After all that happens, then E-Day begins. And E-Day is a fun time, not for the humans, but for the locusts, because a quarter of the entire world's population is wiped out right there. Once E-Day begins, this is kind of a big deal for Sid, because he's sitting there and, he sees the creatures that are coming out. He sees the news about it. He's able to, put one and one together. At one point, it's stated he sees Ukkon, and I'm imagining in that moment, he must have just been losing his mind, oh, shoot. I don't know. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. This is bad. This is bad. They found somewhere to go in the mountains. They're okay. Oh, boy. Oh, jeez. I'm imagining that was the... imagine that, but for, hours later, just having an existential crisis of just, my nightmares have returned to me now, it seems. Okay, this is a thing now. And, of course, he's a lot more grizzled, and, he's a lot more, not down to earth isn't the right word, but he's a lot more, like an ass, pretty much. So I'm imagining when he saw that, he was having his own internal conflict. I don't think he ran to one of his best buddies or family members I know how the locusts exist. I know where they come from. It's never really stated he did anything like that. He was probably finding a way to go and get information, go and get his files. And that really leads 1 year after E-Day, when Prescott's putting together and formating a team to take down Ukkon, or a plan. This is when Sid is sent out, and he's sent out to go and find Gabe. He has to go find Gabe Diaz, because Gabe had a history of being basically spec ops, or working behind enemy lines. This was what Gabe was good for, infiltration missions and stuff. He was very well suited for this, and he held a higher regard until he requested a demotion to work in the motor pool. And that's where we get his nickname Motor Pool from Sid, because he found him in the motor pool, he was working in the motor pool, i.e. you are now motor pool. That's how Sid saw it. So Sid goes and finds him and says, you need to come with me. We have a mission to go get information from Aldair's CIC sect so we can go and get the files for the mission we need to do. So they go out, they grab it. This is when the hammers are coming down. They are literally in the middle of Hammer of Dawn satellite positioning. They're running for it. They're not going to make it back in time to where Gabe was hunkered down with his soldiers. So they're running. They're able to make their way over to a bank and actually lock themselves inside a bank vault. So they get in, they close it shut, and then later on when the strikes are done, they're able to come out and see the entire town has been destroyed and charred. They are some of the only survivors that probably weren't in safe zones aside from stranded. So, I mean, that's a feat right there. Survived the Hammer of Dawn shellings. So, good job. All ready for you two. High five. There we go. Good job. Now, Sid and Gabe are able to make their way back to the original base of operations, the motor pool over on where Gabe was stationed. All of Gabe's people are dead. It wasn't because of the hammer. Ukkon made it there, took them all out on his own. They do learn that the comms are still working, and that's when Gabe's able to get in contact with Prescott. Sid tells him you need to speak to him about the mission. And Gabe begrudgingly is kind of forced into his position of you need to put together an army to take out Ukkon. He's the one creating all these big, heavy monsters. So Sid is kind of just I'm here for the road. Gabe lays down the law of the land of I'm in charge, you listen to me. And honestly, Sid's kind of sure, why not? Because we learn this later on, but I'll just say it now because it's already kind of well known by what I've already talked about. But Sid's pretty much there to go and capture Ukkon. He is now on a mission to prove the cog royally done goofed, and because of the cog, all these people, a majority of the population of the planet are dead, is because of the cog. Sid's basically trying to get revenge right now, and his plan is, I am going to capture Ukkon. Once I have him, I am going to take the SOB through the capital, and I am going to let everyone see him and see what the COG have done and release all the information. Now, this would probably involve him getting his files, because he's still going to need to prove it somehow. Also, you're bringing, one of the top, generals of the COG, I'm sure they're going to be there too. COG generals will be there. But you're bringing, one of the head leaders of the Locust into the main enemy, your stronghold. Sid even says later on, he wasn't thinking too straight on that one. He was thinking about revenge. He wasn't really putting 1 and 2 together on that one. He wasn't coming out with 3. He was coming out with like 82. So that's kind of where we sat with that one. But he does agree, like, you lead the way in motor pool, you got it. And this leads them to going down and hunting down Echo, where they find Marcella and they find Tyrone. They continue on, the rest of Echo is gone, and then they come across a distress call from the Mammoth. This is where we come across Michaela. Now again, this is her hometown. You know, who would have guessed we'd come across her? So we come across Michaela, they help out. Michaela does not trust Cog in general. Now when it comes to this, as you can kind of see, like, Gabe is more sympathetic because he's not a fan of the Cog and what he had to go through for his missions. We're going to touch a lot more on Gabe stuff in his video. This is focused on Sid. We're just going through events. But Gabe's already not a big fan of the Cog. Michaela hates the Cog. Sid has some misgivings about the Cog, but he has misgivings about the people in charge of the Cog. He does not hate the Cog as a whole. For instance, the leadership, the chairmans, he does not like. He does not care for them. Tolman he cared for because that was a family friend. Tolman and like the colonels, whoever was in charge, like whether it be Hoffman, Tolman, anybody, they did not know about what was going on at New Hope. You know, Hoffman had no clue about New Hope until when it's introduced. He never had an idea about it. But the chairmans most certainly knew about it. So he just doesn't trust anyone in charge, and he wants to prove that kind of wrong so that he can, like, basically get revenge for, like, Nana Boo Boo, look at what you did. They meet up, and Gabe's able to talk sense to Michaela. They assist Michaela, and at that point, it comes down to, we're going to hunt down Ukkon, and Michaela joins in. They go through, they try and hunt him down, they come across him, and at that point, Michaela tries to take him out. Sid's kind of just like, it's not going to work. Nothing is going to work like that, because we learned, like we talked about in Ukkon's video, Ukkon can just heal. It doesn't matter what you hit him with, he's fine. So after that, they fight off a Brumok. It goes pretty nasty. They're able to take it down, but they have to make a run for it, and that's when they evacuate over to Vaskar. In Vaskar, we end up learning from Gabe that we're here because we are in no way, shape, or form able to take on Ukkon. We don't have the manpower. A lot of the stranded that were there, a lot of them were civilians, so a lot of them had no combat experience, so that's where Gabe decided, like, okay, we're going to get everyone trained up. We're going to get everyone ready. We're going to build our own army. So I'm going to teach you what you need to know. You also know Michaela. Michaela's going to help out. And finally, Sid is also going to be putting his work into this and showing you the ropes. Now, Sid is... How do we put Sid? He's an ass. That's like the best way I can keep saying he's an ass. So his idea of training is really heavy, like tough love, pretty much. And he goes through and does this with everyone he's going with for training. And when he does this... The problem is that those people weren't a big fan of tough love. So we have 3 people from Michaela's original group that desert and leave. Michaela is rightfully pissed about this. Gabe is like, what's going on? And when Sid learns about this, he's like, I might have gone too far. That one's on me. Now, throughout the rest of the game, we really are trying to track down the 3. We do end up coming across all 3 of them and saving them. I believe all 3 of them are saved. But it's pretty much like everyone's cleaning up Sid's mess that he made. Because, again, Sid is pretty much here for Ukkon. He does not really care about anything else going on. So while everything's going on, while we're hunting down everyone else to save them, while we're looking for info on Ukkon, all that, we come across the fact that we learn Ukkon has Rustlong. And, again, this is something that Sid already knows. But he's not really saying anything. Sid does not really tell anything to anybody until later on. So we need to figure out what's going on or why he's looking for like all of these different things involving Rustlong. We learned that he's looking for the booster that's over at the facility over in Vaskar. That is the... can I remember it off the top of my head? It is the Nadroma. Nadroma, I believe it's called. I hope I'm right. Nadroma Research Facility, where they are researching their way of fixing Rustlong. New Hope, obviously, for the Cog didn't work. Vaskar was also trying something. Theirs was more like boosters instead of working with genetics. So this is where we learned Ukkon was going, and he was getting the booster to try and stabilize his. So like we've said in Ukkon's video, he's kind of like Deadpool, where he still has Rustlong, but because of his healing factor, he's kind of kept everything at like a baseline. But he's not cured, nothing's fixed. He's still suffering Rustlong. So Ukkon is also looking for a way to cure it for himself. It's just that he's not really finding any results either. But this does give Sid's group information on how they can combat Ukkon. They figure out that maybe since he's looking for it so heavily, we could probably put a fake call out to kind of like give information of like, hey, we found these canisters for rust lung. We don't really have any use for it. We're just going to leave it here in a truck, or you guys can pick it up later, or something like that. So he does that. That's what Gabe does. He sets up kind of like a trap. And this is where they actually do catch Ukkon and trap him. Ukkon takes the bait perfectly well, and they hook him right through. And this is where we have all three, Michaela, Gabe, and Sid, come face-to-face with Ukkon. Like, face-to-face with him, not just from a distance. And this is where Ukkon drops the bomb of, like, Sid Redburn, it's been too long. How's it going, buddy? It's been a while. It has. It's been a long time, but I remember you, Sid. I fully remember you. And Sid very well remembers Ukkon, and this kind of like throws everything out of whack, because Gabe and Michaela are kind of just like, what is he talking about? And also at this point, while we have Ukkon hooked, this is when Sid uses his master plan again to knock out Gabe, doesn't deal with Michaela at all, but he decides, I'm going to take Ukkon now, and his master plan, I'm going to parade him down the streets of Aphira to show what the cog has done. Again, Ukkon could easily just be like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. Like, he just abducted me. Like, why would I ever say that, yeah, I'm from New Hope and the cog did this? Again, you know, he's going to have one of the leaders of the Locust, so I'm very certain that someone's going to listen to him. But anyway, his main plan is, I'm going to bring him back with me. This is when Ukkon, again, because Ukkon can just heal from anything, just walks forward and rips the hooks out of his body one by one. Once they're out, he heals up again, gets his arm back. He lost his arm during that too, and he's fine. And pretty much that's when he sends the Corpser out, and they all have to deal with the Corpser. Gabe comes back to consciousness, and that's pretty much everyone against the Corpser. They defeat the Corpser. This is when Sid is kind of like lamenting everything in front of it. He's looking down where Ukkon ran away. Gabe says, like, you owe me information. What's going on? You owe me an explanation. Sid says, I don't owe you anything at all, period. Turns around, probably to leave. And then, again, my favorite moment in the entire game, takes a shovel to the face from Michaela. Beautiful scene. Gets knocked out, and he gets brought back to, he comes to, back at the main base at where the Mammoth is parked in Vaskar. Now, while he is there, he is locked up, stripped of everything. Aside from, like, his leggings, his armor is also taken from him. And this is when they're trying to grill him for information. He's not speaking, he's not talking, so they leave to try and figure out more of another way of getting information or finding some way to fight against Ukkon. Now, after a while of leaving him there to rot for a bit, they come back and say, have you had enough time to stew? You know, do you want to actually tell us what's going on? And he still doesn't want to talk, but again, Gabe is very intelligent. He's like one of the smarter cog out there. Like, not even like science-wise, but just common sense-wise, he's pretty smart. So he decides to, because he doesn't have a fondness at all for like Prescott or anybody like higher up like that, something they both share, he says, I guess you're just no better than Prescott then with all the secrets. Something that Sid takes great offense to. Sid is not a fan of hearing that, because of the fact that the chairmans are what he hates the most. He loves the cog, but the one thing he hates are the gosh darn fiddle-humping, tally-whacking chairmen. So he decides, you know what? You want proof? You want to know what's going on? You want all the information? I can tell you. I know what's going on. Once I tell you, though, there's no going back. Once I tell you this, you can't just go back to your precious little lives of just living as a stranded in Aphira, or being a part of the cog and helping out Prescott, or just going back to the motor pool. You have none of that anymore. Once I tell you this, you're done. And they say, you know what? Go ahead and tell us. Let's see what you're trying to hide. And he tells them. He tells them the Locusts, New Hope. He tells them the cog made them. This is our enemy. We made them. We made our own enemy that's killing us all. That's what's happening. You know, Michaela's like it sounds like something the cog would do. This is when Gabe is just like, it can't be. There's no way that's true. He tells them, like, listen, I hid some files in Vaskar, which is where we are now. I hid them over in Windlock. You want proof? Go grab them. Go take a look at what I stashed away and see if I'm lying. And they just say, like, you better not be lying. Is this the truth? And he says, I wish it wasn't. So they go to Winlock, get his documents, bring it back to Sid, and Sid just says, there you go. Good read, ain't it? So they all come to the conclusion of what happened. Sid's just like, my goal was to take him out. My goal was to bring him through, captured. Like, this is why I was doing it. At that point, too, you have where Gabe is sitting there and he's contemplating things. He goes to talk to Prescott, gives him false coordinates for everything. I should also probably mention, I forgot this part, but it's not really a big thing. Prescott originally tells, after he learns that Sid was going to betray them, he originally talks to Prescott, and Prescott says, deal with him, basically kill him. But that's not who Gabe is. He talks to Prescott again. Prescott's out, I thought I told you to take care of him. I didn't. So, he gives them fake coordinates, and they're leaving just to say, like, Mikhail's like, they're going to come here. And he's like, no, they won't. We're going to be miles out of here by the time they even get everyone over here. Because I put my coordinates on top of that plateau over there. As he says that, a hammer of Dawnstrike comes down and smashes into the side of that plateau where he put those coordinates. At that point, Sid's in the background and says, I told you. I knew that was going to happen. So after all of that happens, they're talking to him again. And he lets off another big piece of information. I know how to defeat Ukkon. I've known this whole time. And they're just like, Mikhail's like, you chose now. You chose right now to actually tell us this. And he basically says, like, I know how to do it. I can give you the information, and you can weaponize it. We can take him out. Stops the healing factor. You can just kill him. This is where we get the cytostatic gas that's introduced that Sid knows about. Again, he was a guard there. He was there for a bit. They probably gave him the information in order to deal with Ukkon now and then, because Ukkon was a pretty rowdy He basically was an inmate there. I was going to say inmate. He was a patient, but they were all inmates. They were all being tortured. He was an inmate. He gives him the information, and he says, we can take him out. No more, no more BS. Gabe says, like, no more capturing anything. We're killing him. Period. He's dying. Pretty much Sid agrees to this. Gabe turns to Michaela and says, puts his hand up for the key. Michaela very begrudgingly gives him the key, because Michaela and Sid are not the biggest besties. So, gives him the key, lets him out, and says, no more. Like, no more secrets, none of this. So as, Gabe is walking off, Sid's about to leave. Michaela comes through and says, no more warning shots. Basically, you pull that again, you're dead. Period. I don't care. You're going to die. So, they leave. They're all okay with each other at the moment. And at this point, it's getting the stuff they're going to need for the cytostatic gas, and they're going to create it to take out Ukkon. Once they have everything all together, Michaela is able to create it, and they now have a weapon to take on Ukkon. They have all of this together. They're all sitting at the fire at the end of the night. And I really like this scene. Like, this is a very well done scene, and I especially like it that, like, it's focused on Sid. I think it's very well done. It's well deserved, where it slowly pans in and, like, zooms into Sid. He starts to basically apologize. He says, like, listen, like, I wasn't thinking clearly. I had revenge on my mind. I wanted to get back for everything they put me through, everything I went through when I was there. And he's basically, like, very, very full-heartedly apologizing. And he's about to say he's sorry when he turns over and sees that Gabe and Michaela both fallen asleep by the fire. This doesn't really bother him, because he's like, that's fine. He's not really a talkative person with his emotions that much. So it's one of those things where it's like, I can live with them not hearing this. Like, basically his apology would have been for himself to kind of overcome what he did. They kind of have already come to the terms of forgiving him, but it's also that situation of where, like, Sid needs to forgive himself. That's what the scene was basically there for. So they decide to continue onwards. They go on another mission where they come across Reyna. Reyna is now a part of the group. They bring her back. At one point when they're trying to get information from her, Sid offers to go talk to her. Gabe is like, no. Because it's funny. Throughout the entire game, it's, like, very hammered in. Like, in the beginning with Echo, when you come across Tyrone and Marcella, you have it with, like, the 3 people that deserted. You have it with Reyna. You have all of that where it's like, don't let Sid talk to people. Just know, like, you're not going to do the convincing here. You're the old, grouchy old man. Like, no, you're not going to do it. We'll take care of this. So that's when Gabe goes in, talks to her, and they finally come to terms, and they get the location, and they decide it is now time to go and fight Ukkon for one last fight. They make their way over to where Ukkon's holding up over at his lab. They make it inside. Michaela hits him with the gas while they're going in, so he is now 0 on the healing factor. They all go in and they start to fight against the Hydra. The worst thing I've ever seen in my life. If you have ever seen the Let's Play, it is a nightmare. But we go in, we fight them off. Sid's going into, like, all of them, all 4 together, the final battle, and they defeat the Hydra. Ukkon falls out of the Hydra at the very end, and I love this scene so much. Like, I've rewatched it again for this video. It is, I don't know, like, it feels so right the way they did it with, like, Ukkon, Sid being there, like, everything Sid did originally in the story. Like, it's so good. So, they take it, they take out the Hydra. Out walks Ukkon, just, you know, feeling it, because he just slammed into the ground. He's not healing anymore. And, you know, Mikhail says, we got a bunch more of that where that came from. He's got, like, the temporary booster that falls from his hands. It's not working or it's already empty. And the line he uses, the next few he uses are so good. He comes out just about to fall to his knees, just cytostatic gas, a drug of torturers. And it hits so hard when you know about Sid's history. It is, oh my goodness, I'm sucking this one off so hard, but it is so good to see. And Sid's looking at him just like, missed you too, asshole. So all of that happens, and he's just talking to Sid of just like, New Hope never really left you. It never did. And this really does probably hit Sid hard, because it's like, once again, all of these decades later, like maybe even like half a century later, here they are face to face once again. And it just hits so well. I loved it so much when you know the history and you get this portion. And this is when Ukkon goes off of like, your suffering has only begun. This is only the beginning of everything. You can take me out, but it's not gonna. And then Reina pulls the trigger and kills him. And you get this like nice somber moment of like, there's Ukkon's dead body. Just the blood's still even coming out. It's still warm. And there's Sid. Sid is a little closer. Everyone's leaving. And he's just looking over his body. He's looking over the body of Ukkon. And just imagine all the thoughts going through his head. Like, the memories of, like, having to torture these children. Having to be a guard there against his will. Not against his will for the guard part, but definitely torturing against his will. You know, all the different things he had to deal with Ukkon in the past. There was probably times where, like, Ukkon probably broke his little facade he had of being just a devious a-hole. And maybe there was a time in the past where, like, him and Sid sat down, like, opposite sides of, like, maybe, like, a room wall. And, like, maybe Ukkon just fully was just, like, I don't know, like, this would just feel so right if it happened. He just sat there one day, just, the facade is gone, and maybe even for just, like, 10 seconds, looking at Sid, or where Sid can hear him, and he's just like, I really miss just being a human. I miss my family. I miss what I was. This was never my choice. None of it. And now I'm here. You know, maybe there was like those few moments where that would have happened. I think that would have been so good of storytelling-wise. If they ever did a book involving like New Hope, oh my goodness, put that in there. Perfect. I would read that in a heartbeat. I already would, but I would read it even sooner. But maybe something like that would have happened, because you really get the feeling of like Sid looking over Ukkon, and probably just so many mixed feelings of like, it's finally over. Probably like, this was just a kid when I knew him. He became a monster and the bane of my existence. My life's work of trying to probably, you know, whistleblow and all of this stuff, bring it to the light, it's done. Powerful stuff, really is. Anyway, continuing onwards. They finally leave the lab. They're out of there. This is when it comes to terms of, he talks to Gabe pretty much, and Gabe and Michaela, because Michaela's the one who asked, like, what's he going to do now, pretty much. And his response is kind of like, don't really know. At this point, none of them are soldiers. They're all basically stranded. They are stranded. And, you know, like it was already talked about earlier, like none of them are returning to Afira. That's never going to happen. So, yeah, stranded. He's given up needing to blow whistles on the cogs, all that stuff. He's done with it because he's just like, maybe some secrets just need to die and stay buried. So they leave. Basically, they all become stranded, and basically, Yeah, at this point, it's all just like, we know they continued to hunt down Ukkon's remaining army that he had on the surface. We know that was happening, but as for like the future afterwards, we're not given anything. I'm going to assume, and even the wiki states this, and I actually agree with the wiki on this one, he was very old into his age. Like, even making it to the end of the Locust War, I mean, there's a chance he didn't do it. Like, old age, there's a chance that could have caught up to him. But like, let's say hypothetically 72. Let's say he's sitting at 72 1 AE. The war ended in 17 AE. So 88 years old, you're telling me he made it there constantly fighting against the Locust. Now, it's not like it couldn't happen, but then we had like 25 years of peace after that. He didn't make it to see what the Swarm were, I can guarantee that. There's a chance maybe if they came out with the Tactics 2, he dies in it. Like, there's a chance that could be a thing. There's no way he's still alive. No way. Unless it turns out, like, he was given, like, I don't know, Ukkon's ability to heal mixed with Reyna's and Mira's, and now he's living in a long life and he hasn't changed. I don't know. Like, there's no way. He's dead. I'm sorry to say it. I do like Sid. He's dead. But that's going to do it, really. That's my ability. I can really draw out these videos if I need. But yeah, so that was the story of Sid. Any bonus facts? His blood type's O negative. Same voice actor as Ezra Loomis. So, you know, Loomis is with us in this one, I guess. But that's about it, really. That's Sid Redburn. I did enjoy learning a bit about him, but again, like, he doesn't have a lot of history. Like, New Hope, and then what happens in the game, and that's really it. Like, the Pendulum Wars, there's nothing really there. So, yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank everyone for making it possible, and thank the patrons for making this possible. Next time, we'll have one more video. We're going to wrap up with our final character discussion after that with Marcella and Tyrone, and then we'll have a few more things coming up. We're getting close to the end. We're in the home stretch. We're almost there. So, thank you all for watching. I love you all to death. Later!